Hello listeners, my name is Klaus Piechocki and I am a tarot card illustrator, and today I am going to be interviewing my new tarot deck that I've illustrated. Really excited about this. The exercise has come from the Modern Witch Tarot Journal by Lisa Sturl, and this is a great deck. You can get it through Liminal 11, and it's such a great deck. It's very feminist. Every character is a woman in it. And yeah, so this is the tarot journal that you can get to go with the deck. And there's spaces for you to write what each card means to you, because the tarot is highly personal and it's a great way of just getting to know yourself as well as using for divination. So in this book is this great tarot deck interview exercise, how it sees you, what kind of messages it's going to give you, sort of the vibe of the deck, basically. I am going to use my deck. This is my deck. It's called the Hierophanies Tarot. Hierophanies. And the Hierophanies are sacred objects. And the Hierophanies is a colourful and queer 81 card tarot deck. I do my best to centre LGBTQIA+ identities within the deck, and I am queer and trans myself, so it's been very important to be as inclusive as I could be. So this is the first print of my deck. The one thing I will say is that this is my initial print. I've actually still not finished the deck. You can follow me on my social media. You can find me under my name, Klaus Piechocki, Piechocki. It's Polish, it's nothing like it's pronounced. Different social media platforms like Instagram. And I also have a Substack, and I'll leave the links in the description. This is an 81 card deck, but I've only completed 60 cards. In this test print is 60 of the cards. I finished the major arcana, the vessels or the cups, and a good quantity of the suits. So I'm not doing this with a full deck of cards, but I feel called to do this now, so I feel like the cards that are appropriate are in here. Let's get started. So, okay. What I do is, so I'm going to pull 6 cards out for this exercise, and we'll see what my deck has to say to me. Please forgive my terrible shuffling, this being my first print, so I'm being quite ginger with them. Alright. That's quite an appropriate one. Okay. Again, very, very appropriate. It's going to give these cards a bit more room to breathe. My first impressions, just looking at this myself, I think this deck has quite a playful energy. The deck itself is, it's a very colourful deck. Very bright and very sort of happy. This card, number 1, for this interview, this is how I will see the deck. this is the Judgment card. I'm the illustrator and designer of this whole deck. So that is the most appropriate card that could have ever come out for how I see the deck, because you might look at this and not see any issues, but when I look at this deck, I'm proud of it. I'm happy with how things have gone, but I just constantly see things, nitpicky things like I'm gonna change, you know. And this isn't the final prints of the card, this is just my test print stage. So, for example, there's some edits I'm gonna make on this card, and this card as well. The deck is absolutely right that I, unfortunately, am going to be its harshest critic. That is very, very appropriate. This is interesting. This is how the deck will see you. I feel quite emotional that if this is how the deck sees me. The Stars card, the stars are what comes after the Tower in the tarot. I am always quite worried when the Tower comes out for me, and I know ultimately the Tower is a helpful card, but I personally find it the scariest card. And the Stars is that moment of peace and calm after the Tower, and it's a very hopeful, it's an extremely positive, hopeful card. Speaking personally for me as a creator, been through quite a bit in my life. My early childhood and adolescence was extremely tumultuous. I had to overcome quite a bit of trauma to get to where I am. I've had a lot of Tower moments in my life where I've had to just walk away from people and situations. So it's nice to know that the deck knows this, the deck knows me, I feel seen by the deck. Hopefully those people that pick up my deck that maybe they've had lives like mine where it's been hard. We've had to just overcome a lot of terrible situations. That the deck understands this about us and is prepared to give us advice and is prepared to see us. No, that's really, really nice. So it's not a fair weather deck. This deck understands what it's like to have trauma and to probably still be living with some trauma and anxieties. That's great. So it doesn't shy away from the lighter subjects, this deck. There's a lot of major arcana energy in this as well, so there's a lot of major themes. And the major arcana tends to be about larger chapters and lessons in your life, the sort of the big things, whereas the minor arcanas, like the suits, tend to be about you know, the everyday bits and pieces in your life. So when I first pulled this card, actually, I don't know whether you can see, I'll pull it up so you can sort of have a look at it. This is the Sun card, and the Sun card is my trans-masculine card of the deck. Most positive card in the entire tarot deck. I never really felt much connection with it. This one in my deck, it actually traditionally represents the divine masculine, and I'm a trans man myself. I decided to rework the Sun card into the sun. And there's a bit of a Kate Bush reference there. I'm a lifelong Kate Bush fan, and she's got this great line in Cloud Busting where it's like your sun's coming out. That's what I think about when I look at my Sun card. So this card's all about the divine masculine and kind of celebrating your masculine energies. It's sort of a love letter to fellow trans masks like myself. And I thought this card might turn up in this spot, actually, how the deck sees you, but that would be very, very simple. This instead, in terms of the deck interview, this is in what space, type of query will you best communicate? This tells me that this deck, although this deck will not shy away from darker topics and trauma, it's joyful. The fact that this card ends up here in the in this tarot deck interview, it's joyful. It wants to find what brings you joy and to push you towards that. So it's a very positive deck. Again, that sort of playful, colourful, playful, positive energy. What the deck's strengths are. The card that I've got in the deck's strengths are the Two of Vessels. In a traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck, this would be the Two of Cups. It's very much like a lover's card. This is a very romantic card. If this comes up in a reading, it tends to suggest there will be a new loved one entering your life, or a very loving friendship, just good relationships, like really loving relationships. And if this card pops up in a reading, it can be a clearer sign of the lover's card itself, that everything will be just happy, healthy, good partnership. So in this place, under the question, what are the deck's strengths? This tells me that it's a very loving partnership. And if we think about what makes a loving partnership, a loving partnership is built on honesty and truth, not sugarcoating things, but trying to communicate in a very open, honest way, in a way that you feel like someone will understand as well. If there's something difficult you need to tell someone you love, there's a way to do that while being honest. You can use what you know about the person to soften the message and to put a positive spin on it and to really relate to what you know about that person. This suggests to me that this deck, when I read with the Hierophanies deck, it will be loving but honest with me, like a good partner would be. That is probably the best card I could ever imagine in this space. Really delighted about that. Okay, the next is, what are the deck's weaknesses? This is really interesting. This has come up under the weaknesses, and this, if you can see, is the Chariot card. The Chariot is another major arcana card. It's a very positive card, but it's about bumps in the road. If this card comes out for me, I tend to read it as things will be fine. Whatever you're trying to achieve, wherever you're trying to go, you'll get there, you'll be successful. But there's going to be a bump in the road, there's going to be setbacks. But keep going. My intuition tells me, as a weakness, this deck, and this is funny because this is very much like my personality. If you ever get a tarot reading from me, you'll get a very similar kind of reading. I will always tell someone to go for things. Despite setbacks, I will just say, go for it. Go. You know, if you really want to do something that you've just never done before, and there's always going to be setbacks, there's always going to be obstacles. But if it gets you where you want to go, then I think it's always worth doing. I will always encourage people to go for their dreams, even if it's going to be a big learning curve. So it sounds like this deck is similar to me, that this deck will tell you that something is a good idea, that a road is good to go down, despite setbacks and despite obstacles down that road. Because ultimately, it knows that what you want is at the end of that road. So, right, and lastly, number 6 is, how is this deck unique? Whenever I see Ace of Vessels, which is traditionally the Ace of Cups card in the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Ace of Vessels for me, I tend to read it as good news from a loved one. And a bit like the Two of Vessels being how the deck will speak to me and the strengths of the deck. This does suggest that it is letters from a loved one as a deck. This suggests to me that this deck is like talking to a loved one, a trusted friend who will not lie to you, will not exaggerate, but will be very honest with you, will take into account who you are as a person and what you're capable of. And they might not be shy about telling you to go back to school, to really put in the work for what you want. There's going to be a bit of tough love there. But there's going to be sensitivity too to what you've been through as a person. what you can cope with sort of emotionally, spiritually. But joyful. So this deck is very interested in getting you to a place where things are happy and positive and joyful for you. And that's the deck's focus. And judgment, I'm going to come back to judgment. I mean, again, this is how the deck sees me as its creator, but then this is also how the deck, and it's funny me saying, you know, creator, because that makes me think of Frankenstein and, you know, Frankenstein's monster. I've got quite a unique judgment card in that this is heart in a box, which is something that they do with modern science for heart transplants. They can actually hook the donor heart up into a box so the heart can function and keep beating while it's in this box, and all the blood goes round and like the heart stays fresh and happy and healthy, so it can be transported greater distances. And traditionally the judgment card in the Rider-Waite-Smith is a very Christian card, all about Judgment Day. That didn't resonate for me because I am a pagan witch. And for me, judgment is all about legacy. Judgment is what you leave behind in this world. And it's sort of summing up how you exist in the world. It asks you to think about, do you leave the world a better place? You know, what energy do you bring to places and people that you encounter? If you look at yourself and think, I'm not being the best version of myself, there's always an opportunity to have a change of heart and try again. And especially with the donor heart. Sometimes when I'm doing admin, I like to watch TV shows that I've seen 100 times in the background, and there's a great episode of Grey's Anatomy with Heart in a Box. They use this heart in a box that they're babysitting for the day because, you know, they're surgeons, and they use it as an oracle. And maybe that was in the back of my mind when I made this card. You know, it's really about looking inward. It's about looking at your legacy. And if you're the sort of person that is interested in near-death experiences or NDEs, you know, when we die, we review our life and decide if we want to make any changes. And those of us that are able to come back from a near-death experience come back with more wisdom, and they can make those changes. And this deck itself, you know, speaking personally, because, you know, this is sort of reading off my energy at the moment. I mean, this deck and this sort of work I do, you know, this is my first tarot deck, and it's taken me a long time to get here. But this is what I want to leave in the world, and this joyful energy as well. If this is what I can bring, I'm going to be quite happy. So that is the Hierophanies Tarot. If you want to support this deck, the deck itself will be going live on Kickstarter in August of this year. So if you decide to support the deck, that would be absolutely amazing. And hopefully I've given you a sense of what kind of deck you'd be receiving and what kind of energy it would give you and what kind of readings. So thank you very much, and keep in touch, and I hope you're going to have an amazing rest of the day. Thank you so much.